So, one of the things that gets recommended so often is to trust your intuition. And I find that to be very incomplete because sometimes you can trust your intuition and sometimes you can't. And sometimes you may be able to trust your intuition in one topic and not in another, or in one phase of your life and not in another phase. And especially for victims of abuse who are in relationships with people who are undermining their sense of reality, overriding their understanding of themselves, their identity. That person may be compromising your intuition. But then sometimes victims of abuse like have that, little voice in the back of their head that's like, there's a problem here, and they can trust the intuition. And so I find it to be a more complex topic than I've ever seen discussed. So one of the things that can really help you look at, can I follow my intuition? Can I trust it? Is to look at your past history of following your intuition. If you look at your past history and the following the intuition tends to work, and you're not romanticizing like the outcomes, like, you're objectively looking at it, then, more likely than not, you can trust your intuition. But if you look back on your history of trusting your intuition and it does not work out, then it may not be the right choice for you. Also, if you are in a good phase of your life, your intuition may be on point. But if you're in a bad phase of your life, it may be compromised. Or it could be in some areas you're doing great with it and some you're not. So somebody might have good intuition when it comes to, work and things non-relational. But then in a relationship, like a romantic relationship or interpersonal relationships with their family or friends or something, their intuition may be compromised. So it could be that you have both. I know for myself, I discovered while I was in high school that, I have often taken a test based off my intuition and vibes. Just being really good at pattern recognition and having an intuitive kind of like understanding of how the topic might work. And so, I could sit down and take a test, even if I hadn't studied, and do pretty good. That was not the case for AP Economics. For AP Economics, I discovered it did not matter how I thought that things went, because the answer was always wrong. And I got to the point where I went, okay, I can't trust my intuition on this answer. The answer I think it isn't is probably the correct answer. And once I started answering questions that way, I started doing much better in terms of grades. So it could be that situation where you're not, you have great intuition in one area, but then like it's not great in another area. Really, the secular explanation for intuition is going to be your underlying pattern recognition. Your brain, whether or not you're aware of it, is assessing and analyzing and pattern recognition and putting that all together. And it's sometimes into these inchoate nudges that we can't necessarily consciously articulate, but behind the background, our brain's been pulling stuff together. And this is where it's really important to recognize if you have any kind of like mental health challenge that impedes your ability to accurately understanding reality, or if you're in a situation where your ability to understand reality is compromised, you may have to do the opposite of what like your intuition is telling you. A lot of it is going to be related to self-awareness. So that's like a process, I feel like we all go on in our journey as we get older. You become more self-aware, especially the more you make mistakes. So, we're like learning, we're growing, but it's definitely something to explore. Like if you have a professional counselor, therapist, whomever, getting sort of a beat on, do I understand reality? Am I relatively self-aware? Can I trust my intuition? And the thing is, it's not so many times people will take this in a bad way, and I don't see it that way. To me, it's more diagnostic. Oh, okay, if I'm struggling with low self-awareness here, then I know I need to make adjustments. And I understand not everybody's not that way, but I think that the more judgment you can remove from it for yourself, the better decisions you can make that are, more effective, and impactful in a positive way for your life. Anyway, I hope this makes sense, and I'll talk to you next time.